'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads, and Mamma in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from the bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave the luster of midday to objects below, when, what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With this little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky. So up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with the sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then, in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples how merry, his cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly, that shook when he laughed, like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him, in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." A Visit from St. Nicholas, Clement Clark Moore, 1779 to 1861. Hello. It's been a little bit. As always, things didn't go to plan. So now we get this. And you probably are curious because you must be confused, because by now there's no way that I've messed up twice. I have. So, I tried so desperately, because I don't want to give out spoilers just yet, but based off the title, I'm sure you already know what we're talking about. But I really tried my hardest to make sure that I was going to do it right, I was going to do it right, and I was going to write the script, and then I was going to do the video stuff, and then I was going to edit it, and then I realized 2 days ago that there was no way that I was going to have a script done before the end of the week. And I was going to need some time to edit the video, even if I did bad edits, because I'm not a fast editor. And it kind of all came crashing down on me, like always. So, what can you do, right? Probably do this earlier, right? But I tried, and we're just going to talk about it. We're going to talk about all the things that I liked about the movie, everything that I think was fascinating about it, a theory or two that I've got, the emotions it holds. Thinking back, I probably could have, done some research and, made this, informative. But I wasn't thinking. I wasn't thinking at all. And also, this is the second time I've recorded this today. My throat hurts so bad. And I'm very sorry. There's going to be probably patched up moments because I'm drinking water in between, and I don't want to have just 30 different clips of me drinking water in the span of 45 minutes. And I'm really hoping to, like, cut down this time on time as well, because the last time I ran for, like, an hour and 20, and I was like, oh, I'll be done by, like, 50 minutes. Wrong. So hopefully this time I can cut it down a little bit more. Yeah. It was really hard to figure out everything and, like, make some connections, because originally what I wanted to do was I wanted to connect how we're all feeling right now, because I've noticed that there's a lack of Christmas spirit and joy going around right now. And I don't mean that in the sense that, oh, everybody's miserable and everybody hates each other and nobody wants to live right now. Though that could entirely be the case. I mean that as in, like, it's December 17th. Christmas is next Thursday. I don't feel very Christmas. Like, I don't feel very holiday spirit. And I did do research, but this was predominantly more for the actual essay that I was going to do. And how, like, oh, right now, you know, we're all feeling, like, stress and depression. And the main causes of that is usually, like, financial stress, because the holidays are living out of your pocket like they're a bum. Probably is mean, but that's whatever. This is the second time I've done this. You can't get mad at me. I'm doing my best. It's financial stress, or it's grief, because that's when you realize that, you know, you don't have certain people in your life anymore as around the holidays. Or just, like, family issues in general was what I found to be another thing, was, like, oh, you don't have, like, the best you know, you're going no contact with your mom. Well, now you're, like, stressed out because you don't got anybody anymore. And it's just, like, I guess maybe that could actually probably fall under the grief, because you're grieving the loss of a relationship. Regardless, there's just, I noticed that right now it's really hard. And, of course, the study that I looked at, that was done in 2022. And obviously they didn't have the same economical crisis that we have now, the same political issues that we have now, the same education issues that we have now. You know, like, it's entirely different. So I was, like, thinking, oh, I could probably connect this to this movie. And then I was like, that's not going to work, because, frankly, the main character is a white man who, in the 90s, was head of sales and marketing for a toy company. So he makes a lot of money. He owns a house. He has a child. I mean, he had a wife, but they're divorced, so he's got an ex-wife. He's white, middle-aged, middle class. Like, he's everything that everybody is dreaming about right now who doesn't have anything. Like, how do you connect that? You don't. You can't. Like, you cannot literally sit there and compare these two things and be like, well, that's actually the same thing as to why they feel, and, like, why you feel so bad, and he feels so bad because of that. It's like, he's not going through an economical recession in the 90s. I mean, they had economical crisis back then too, but, like, it's not the same. And even if it was the same, he's still doing good. He's head of sales, so it doesn't really affect him. You know, like, the only thing that he really has to worry about is the fact that his relationship with his son is so bad. And that's, like, the inherent purpose of the movie. You know? So, I was like, I can't connect this. And that really threw a wrench in my plans, because I realized that a few days ago, and then I was like, there's no way for me to backtrack, undo all of this work, and figure out what I could connect this to, because that's going to take, like, a month of planning. You know, I was trying to, like, throw this together kind of last minute, because I was like, oh, a good little video before the end of the year. What a good way to end it. That'd be so cool if I did, like, a Christmas one. Again, didn't have the foresight of planning to do this. And then I mentioned that this is the second time I've recorded this, because the initial recording, I decided that I really needed to play with my audio. And so what I did was I turned the echo up just slightly on accident. This guy is all the way down now. And so there was an hour and 24 minutes of me with an echo that I could not salvage, because I'm not handy with editing yet. Hi, baby. You want up here? Hi, sweetheart. Everybody say hello to Richie. Yeah, so I kind of was just like, oh, awesome. Oh, the holiday spirit really is here. I did want to mention that, I guess to really tack on to what I was saying earlier, I know that everybody's been feeling the stress right now. I've been feeling it too. This isn't like just a one group of people. Like, everybody's feeling it right now. And I think this is important in the time of year to have kindness and patience and compassion for others. I know it's hard to kind of hold that brick of patience for people, but we don't know what's going on in other people's lives. So just, I guess, I don't know, have patience, be kind. It's closer towards the the actual Christmas date, so I understand if, like, a little too late, but it is what it is. And even if you don't celebrate Christmas, it's still just good to have patience and kindness around the holidays regardless. When on, like, low days where it's just like I need to just find something, I've been listening to Schlatt's A Very 1999 Christmas, or Klaus on Netflix, because that one will, like, bring me to tears. And then also, today's topic is another one that I'll, like, watch frequently if I need the holiday spirit back in my body because I just feel like a dumpster fire and that, like, nothing's good. So, I recommend those, obviously, but also, it's okay to not be super festive. I feel like it's understandable. I think a lot of people have forgotten that it is almost Christmas, or, like, the major holiday that we celebrate in North America, or one of, I should say. That's just what I wanted to say, I guess, before I really got into it. Without further ado, let's hear me talk about why a broken man essentially turning into one of the biggest names in holiday history is a good thing. First off, I did want to say that I understand why some people might not watch the movie, or watch these movies in particular. Frankly, I get it. Tim Allen isn't everybody's cup of tea. Not everybody's going to find him very funny. I think he has the humor for middle-aged divorced dads. And I'm going to stand by that, no matter what. Because, frankly, I don't normally find his stuff funny. The only reason I even mention this movie is because it's got interpersonal nostalgia mixed in with it. It brings me back to a time where life was simpler, and that's why I like it so much. It's just because it has that nostalgic feeling for me. It reminds me of, like, older Christmases before everything turned into fluorescent white, bright, and not, cool, or I guess not cool, warm yellow lights and the multicolored warm lights. So it's like a nostalgia thing for me. But I understand people who are like, I don't like Tim Allen, he's not that funny. Heard, valid, seen. Because of that, I actually play quite a few movies during the Christmas time. Or holidays, I'm sorry. I'm going to be switching between Christmas and holidays so much because the movie focuses on Christmas. But I instinctively want to say holiday. I think it's the retail worker in me. That's what I think. I don't know. But I watch a lot of Christmas movies. And I do mean Christmas in the sense of, like, it is about Christmas. Like Klaus, I mentioned that one earlier. That one I love to watch. The Santa Claus movies. Polar Express, The Grinch. Like, I just kind of, like to watch them. They're not all of my favorites. Some I only watch, like, once a couple of years. Just because it's, like, especially with the Grinches, those I don't need 3 different copies of the same story, is what I'm trying to say, because they keep producing the same story with different small changes in details or music, and then they're like, well, that's a new movie, and you're like, that's the same movie, just a different cast, different details, and you expect me to buy it? And evidently, yes. And I mean, I have bought it, but I'm a chump, so I'm not gonna lie here. I'll fully admit it. I fell into the capitalistic tendencies. So all I'm saying is, sure, did I fall into capitalistic means? Yeah, but I got a movie out of it that I can put onto an external hard drive and watch whenever I want and not have to pay for a subscription to a streaming service where I may not get to see that movie ever because they don't have it. That's all I'm saying. In particular, I do want to say the Santa Claus movies are usually a repeat offender when it comes to the holiday season. I will watch them a lot. In this instance, I watched them too many times that I don't think I need to watch it next year because I maxed out. And also, if it wasn't made clear, that is today's topic. Today's topic is about Santa Claus movies. So, before we really get into it, because I know I keep saying, oh, before I get into it, but before I actually, get into it, there's some things that you should probably know. The Santa Claus series is a TV series called The Santa Clauses. That was made after the third movie by 10, 15 years. The first movie is called Santa Claus. And then it's Santa Claus 2 and then Santa Claus 3. That's the trilogy. And then they came out in 2021, 2022 with the Santa Clauses. I don't hate the Santa Clauses. I also don't really like them. I watched 2 episodes, so I can confidently say that, at least I saw it. I know what kind of happens. I've seen, spoilers, and it's been talked about, and it's not like it came out recently, so I can't just be like, oh my god, I've never... we've all gotten the spoilers at this point. It's been out for a little bit now, that it's you kind of know. I don't hate it, but I don't like it. For a few reasons. It felt like a money grab, which is what they do, is that they're going to reboot series. Fine. It was a money grab, for sure. It was kind of weird with the family, because, spoilers for the third movie, but the third movie is about Santa and his wife, and they're, having... By the end of the movie, they have a kid. A baby. A brand new newborn baby. The baby is in the Santa Clauses, the TV series, as well as another baby. But it it felt to me like it just pushed out everything that happened in movies 1 and 2. 1 and 2. So I was no thank you. Also, it didn't have a couple of my favorite characters. They didn't return. I would have loved to seen Jack Frost or any of the spirits, Mother Nature, the Tooth Fairy, Sandman. That would have been cool, but I didn't see them. Or if they did show up, it wasn't, consequential to the story. It wasn't important. It was just something going on in the background, and it was, a funny gag. The Santa Claus movies and TV series is funny, but it's there's also a story happening, something important's going on. I didn't like it for that. I also didn't like it because they did Bernard kind of dirty. That's pretty much it. I didn't like the Santa Claus series because of that. And that's fine. Whatever. I don't need to really watch it, I know there's 2 seasons out, and frankly, I would actually watch it or try to watch it again because of Gabriel Iglesias in it, but not this year. In the trilogy, I don't watch the second movie, because the second one diverges, I feel, a lot more than the third one does. Or maybe this is how I remember it. I watched the first movie a lot, because I wanted to make sure I got everything correct for what I'm doing. But the second movie, I watched twice, and I haven't seen the third one this year yet, because that's happening later. I dislike the second one. I don't hate it, I dislike it. Because of the creepy Nutcracker soldiers and creepy Santa. That's it. If those weren't at all involved, fine. But I think it's because they literally just give me the creeps, and I just would rather not deal with, any nightmares from that. I'm good. I don't like it. But I will say, there were a couple positives to that movie. I liked that they had the same reoccurring cast with some added people. I did want to note, though, that the added people, oh god, what's his name? Oh man, what's his name? One of the elves was also in The Cat in the Hat, and I don't remember the guy's name, the actor or the character name, but it was nice to go, oh my god, that's a familiar face, because The Cat in the Hat live action movie is also a guilty pleasure of mine. Even though all of my friends hate it. I don't know why. I don't know why they would hate such a beautiful movie, but they do. So, and then there was, I think, a few other popular actors in it. I liked that they introduced a couple spirits like Mother Nature, Tooth Fairy, Sandman. Like, it was nice to see that because, I don't know, it's like it adds more information into like the Santa Claus world. It's just world building, but it was nice to see. As always, Mother Nature is like so cool. She's hot. Love her. And there was more Bernard. I liked that there was more Bernard. That movie because shocker, in the first movie he appears 4 times and only 4 times and only at integral moments, and that sucks. On the scale of like how good I like the third movie is okay. I mainly like it for the plot because I find the plot very interesting. Like it's a very interesting take. It's essentially It's a Wonderful Life, but for the Santa Claus, which is cool. It's a Wonderful Life is a very classic story for its reasons, but yeah, I think that I prefer third over the second one, but nothing really beats the first movie for me, just because it's kind of associated to like nostalgic feelings. I know that I used to watch this movie with my family as a child, and it just reminds me of like simpler times when I was with them more. Whereas now I don't really see them as much because life does that, as it tends to do. Back to the main topic at hand. Before I finish this segment off and I send this home, I did want to say that I wrote down that there was other reasons as to why I liked the first and third movie. I'm just saying, I'm just a girl, okay? But like Bernard and Jack Frost and Mother Nature are like kinda hot, you know? And the Tooth Fairy and Sandman, I mean, it's probably because it's very reminiscent to me of Rise of the Guardians, which features a lot of these characters. Features Jack Frost, Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, which is in this, Mother Nature, and the Tooth Fairy. And it's just, the parallels between the two are great. Those are also pretty good reasons as to why I like the first and third movie a lot. I mean, they do appear in the second movie, of course, because that's how we get introduced to some of these guys. But I just can't get over the plastic nutcrackers, okay? I'm sorry, guys. It's just too much. It's too much. So at this point, I've kind of just waffled around it, maybe a little too long. And I don't think I've ever actually explained fully what we're doing here. I know I mentioned earlier about a broken man, and that relation to Christmas. So specifically today we're talking about the Santa Claus. Not number 2 or 3 or the series. I just want to put that out there. I know I mentioned them, but that's just because it's like without mentioning them, you're kind of just like ignoring them, and you can't really ignore 3/4 of the rest of the associated films and show. So I mentioned them. Sorry. And now I get to go through and explain to you the events that happen within the story that kind of contribute to why or what I was thinking in the first place. I condensed the movie down, but there's still a lot to get through. So I'm very sorry. It's going to take a couple minutes. If you already know the events that happen, great. If you don't, even better, because that means this won't be a waste. Without further ado, let me start, I guess. Okay, so our movie starts out with Scott Calvin, who is head of sales and marketing at a toy company called... Actually, I don't even know what toy company it is, but it starts us out at a holiday party for that company because they did really well on sales that year for a toy called Hello Dolly. This isn't important. The important part is this starts us out with a guy named Scott Calvin. Now, Scott Calvin has a son named Charlie with his ex-wife, Laura. Laura and Scott are no longer married. They're divorced. And Laura has married in with a guy named Neil. So Laura and Neil are together. They're called Laura and Neil Millers. I will mention their last name a little bit. So I just want to put it out there as Miller's house. That's them. So they have a child together, Laura and Scott. I guess Neil could be involved too, because technically Charlie views Neil as another father figure, I guess, if we were to get technical and psychoanalyze. So it starts us out there, and then it pushes forward a little bit, and Scott somehow forgot that he was picking up his son from his ex, from Laura's, and so they meet at his house. He makes up excuses like he always does, doesn't hold himself accountable, meets them there, invites Laura in, tries to get Neil to come in so that he can squabble with them. Neil's like, we gotta go, whatever. They talk, and apparently Neil had told Charlie that Santa Claus doesn't exist, and that it's a mind thing, that you have to believe in it there, but he doesn't physically exist. And whatever, he's 8. I could kind of see it, their reasoning behind it was very whatever, it's traditional, it's kind of how it goes. You lose that magic and wonder after a little while. Scott doesn't like this, gets upset with them. Laura and Scott argue like they always do. It's a divorced couple, and they go. Or Laura goes. Laura and Neil go. I shouldn't say they go. That's wrong. Laura and Neil go. And so then it's just Scott and Charlie, and Scott, of course, burns dinner, and they get to go have dinner at Denny's. They make it back. Scott reads Charlie the Night Before Christmas, this abridged version from what I read earlier, and then they go to sleep. There's some, funny bits in between that, they try to go to a Chinese restaurant, it's closed. Charlie's a rose such a clatter, which I guess is kind of funny because it's just a jumbling of Scott's words, but I find it funny because, honestly, I too have probably would say the exact same thing and not realize. So, Charlie's being cheeky and calling his dad out on it. Whatever. Few hours into the night, Charlie wakes up because he heard something on the roof. And that's crazy because he's like, oh my god, Santa's here. And he goes tell his dad. And Scott's like, what's going on? He's got that, what are you doing? And you're, whatever. He's confused, and then he hears it too. And he's like, Charlie, stay inside. I'm going to go outside, and I'm going to go see what's going on. And he goes outside, and of course Charlie doesn't follow, or doesn't listen to him at all, because why would he? And they both see this guy in a red, big jumpsuit fall off the roof and land on the snow, and just, evaporate. And Charlie's convincing his dad to put on the jacket and to go and do whatever. So Charlie sees a ladder from the Rose Suchik Ladder Company, and he decides that he's gonna just climb up it and go onto the roof. And so his father follows after him, trying to get his kid to come down because, that's not safe. And also, what are you doing on the roof? And they see a sleigh with reindeer attached. And Charlie climbs in and convinces his dad to climb in and, gaslights, manipulates girl bosses. And then Scott follows after him, and they move to the next house. And then Charlie convinces Scott to put on the Christmas suit that they had with them, because they took it with them before they left, for some reason. And you know what? Scott just says, screw it, fine, we're going to do it. And so then he puts the suit on, and Charlie convinces him to go down and deliver a present or two. And then he does that as well. And then before you know it, that kind of just continues over and over and over again until the end of the night, where they run out of presents, and they want to go home. And so they're like, take us home. And the reindeer do just that. Except they don't take them home to wherever they live in the story. I don't know where they live in the story. I want to say Delaware, but that's probably not true. So they take them home to the North Pole, where we find out that Scott had essentially agreed to a contract called the Santa Claus, where he put on the suit, and now he's Santa Claus. Congratulations. He now gets to spend 365 days a year. He now gets to spend 364 days a year dreaming and imagining how he's going to deliver presents, and then spend 1 day a year delivering presents. Amazing, right? The general gist of it, though, is that Scott has to figure out his life before he comes back next Thanksgiving. Like, he's due back Thanksgiving of the following year. So he needs to figure out everything, because he now is bound to a duty to these kids. And they end the night going to sleep. We meet a couple other characters, but I wouldn't say they're very, like, integral to the story, in the same sense that, like, the main characters are. I mean, we meet Bernard, we meet Judy, but they don't make them very important. At the time, at least. In the beginning. Right. So, they make it to wherever they're sleeping for the night, and then they wake up the next morning and they're back home in Wisconsin, I guess. I don't know. Scott thinks it's a dream. Charlie's certain that it isn't. I mean, there's more on that later. The only proof that they were even there was because Scott was wearing a pair of pajamas with SC on, like, embroidered on his, not his lapel, but on his shirt. It's on his shirt. And so that's the only reason. But everything's kind of fuddled from that night. Cut to Charlie's inviting, his parents to a day at his job, and they're talking about their jobs. An employment fair for 2-year-olds, if you will. I don't know. And Charlie brings up that his dad is Santa Claus. And of course, Scott saves the day, and he's like, actually, that's not true. I'm kind of like him, but I just make toys and presents to give to kids, but I'm not actually Santa Claus. And that's kind of what starts the whole issue. Is because over the next couple of months, it's just going to be Charlie saying the exact same thing over and over and over and over again. And everybody except for Scott, everybody getting concerned because Charlie's thinking Scott's Santa, and that doesn't make any sense because Scott's this, like, mid-weight white guy in his, like, 40s. Huh? What do you mean? Like, your dad's not Santa. So, we fast forward a bit, and Neil, who is Charlie's stepdad, Neil is a psychologist. I don't think he's a child psychologist, and I don't think he's a particularly good psychologist, but he is a psychologist, and he's brought it up to Laura that it's concerning and questionable how often Charlie keeps talking about Scott being Santa. And it's gotten to a point where they're questioning removing visitation for Scott. Like, because they think that Scott's the problem, because he's enabling it. And Scott doesn't particularly know this just yet. So it's kind of like just talked about between Laura and Neil. Meanwhile, Scott's going through, like, body changes, like it's puberty all over again. He's gaining weight, he can't keep it off, he's growing a beard, and nothing will get rid of it, his hair's turning white, like, he's dealing with all of these issues, which isn't helping the case at all, because people think that he's doing it on purpose to, like, fit that role for Charlie, when in reality, Scott's just, like, dealing with it the best he can. You can't just be like, well, I am actually Santa Claus, and this is me growing in my belly. Like, that's kind of weird. And so it comes to a head where Laura and Neil bite the bullet. They take Charlie to the courthouse, they talk to a judge, and they pull Scott's visitation. And so around Thanksgiving, Scott no longer has the ability to see Charlie. It's sad, it is what it is, though. Whatever. He does stop by the Miller's house, though, before he set back to go to the North Pole. Because, like I said earlier, he only had, he had technically less than a year. So he only had, like, 8 months to fix everything. And in doing so, you know, he did the naughty and nice list. He did, he got fired, I think, at one point. It was either fired or he quit, but I'm pretty sure he got fired. Because they thought he was going crazy, because he was, you know, gaining all this weight, growing his hair out, like, things. He was not the same Scott that they remembered. And so, fast forward to Thanksgiving, you know, he's figured things out, and he stops by to say goodbye to Charlie, and Bernard shows up. And Bernard's like, just take the guy with us. Like, let's just take Charlie, go to the North Pole, work on stuff. It'll be rad. Let's go. And so Scott, I mean, doesn't say no. Really, he should have. But they take Charlie, they go to the North Pole. Except Laura didn't know. Didn't say anything, couldn't convince him otherwise. And so she puts out a kidnapping report, because technically what happened was kidnapping. And that comes to bite us in the tush later, because, well, you kidnapped a child, and you're running around as Santa Claus, so that's not quite good. But North Pole, leading up to Christmas, they're just constantly working and improving things, making sure that stuff is ready to go for kids, fixing the sleigh, modifying the sleigh, modifying the suit, Ranger, like, they're fixing everything, modifying, doing everything. The running gag is, like, what if I fall off a roof? Because that's how Scott got the job in the first place. But, like, it's just, like, they're just building up, right? And so, next big thing that happens is on Christmas, Charlie wants to drop off presents under the Millers, or at the Millers. So, Scott takes them there. He goes down the chimney, goes to drop off the presents, except, oh my god, he's actually just walked into a police and SWAT sting, because he's the person that kidnapped Charlie, and they cuff him, take him to the jail, the county jail, or wherever. It wasn't prison, it was like the county jail, because they were still at the police station. So they take him over to the police station, put him in holdings, except there's no Charlie, because in their brains, they didn't think that he wasn't going to have Charlie with them. They were like, oh, he's going to be there. Except, no, Charlie's on the freaking roof, chilling out, freaking out, because he's on the roof. He can't get down. He's got 8 reindeer, a sleigh full of presents, and nothing else to do. And so he's just like, you know, calling for help. Back at, you know, North Pole headquarters, Bernard, Judy, and, I can't remember the other guy's name. They both are like, they're all like, whoa, hey, Santa hasn't checked in a little bit. What's going on? And they're like, his tracker's not moving. So they send out ELFS. I don't know what ELFS means. I'm not sure. I know. It's essentially the SWAT team, or like the secret mission teams that you'll find, you know, in those like movies, that they send out to retrieve, you know, and then take them back, right? They're the retrieval specialists. And they go to where Charlie is, talk to Charlie, pick Charlie up so that he can help them out. And then they head out to the police station, grab Scott from holdings, yank him out of there, get him back on the road because he's still got toys to deliver. And we get a good amount of, like, film of him back at the Millers talking with Laura and Neil and Charlie. And this is, like, it's kind of, like, sad because it's, like, basically, like, Scott understanding that, like, he's not really going to be a part of this kid's life anymore. Like, fully understanding, like, yeah, this is it, you know. He says goodbye to Charlie, and Charlie is just, like, heartbroken, as one would be. And then Bernard shows up again, because of course he does. And he informs us that the same snow globe that he gave them at the beginning of the film, if he, like, looks into it and wishes for his dad, Scott's gonna appear. And then there's also, like, the realizations between Laura and Neil that, like, oh, yeah, Scott wasn't lying. He is actually Santa Claus. And then we see the police show up because they finally caught on. And then Laura booking it outside to go, like, oh, wait, my ex-husband, he's gone, he's not here. And then we see Santa Claus on the roof getting into his sleigh and saying, ho, 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 Merry Christmas, blah, 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 blah. And then he's off into the night. And it's almost like nothing even happened to begin with, except a whole lot happened. And then I think the last scene ends with Charlie shaking the snow globe like an hour later and going, my dad's not here. And then his dad showing up and being like, I was literally over the Atlantic. What do you want? Like, you just saw me an hour ago. Like, kid, come on, wait a week. And yeah, they talk. Charlie gets to ride in with Santa, and that ends the movie, essentially. And now I get to go over and talk about certain things that I said, because it might be confusing. So I mentioned Scott a lot. I mentioned him so much. And then I stopped, and I mentioned Santa. The reason I did that is not because I got confused. I knew exactly what I was doing, I promise. But because I felt that when watching the movie as much as I did the past few weeks, because it was a lot, I saw that there was like a subtle tonal shift in the writing and the acting, where it didn't expressively like feel like it was Scott Calvin and more like Santa Claus at certain points. Like, you kind of see in certain segments, like, Scott slowly turning into Santa. And I identified it as, like, two separate people. So, like, there's Scott Calvin, and then there's Santa Claus. And Scott Calvin is slowly morphing into nothing. Like, he's going to no longer really exist afterwards. No one to mourn, no one to visit, nada, nothing. And Santa Claus, he's a pretty important figure in a lot of history. You look at any religion and he's sometimes there. And maybe not even religion, but just culture in general. He's there. So I kind of theorized, a game theory, if you will, that the tonal shift is because it's Scott Calvin morphing into Santa Claus, except after he morphs, Scott Calvin's no longer needed because he's just a person, and so is Santa Claus, but Santa Claus is a bigger, more important person, and once you put on that role, you can't exactly ever be the person you were before, which is Scott Calvin. Hi, this is Scott Calvin. So that's what I theorized, and I know to back it up, I need like a bunch of evidence, and the only evidence I could actually like explicitly think of is the situations leading up to the visitation being taken away, because he gets fatter, he gets the beard, the white hair, and that it takes place kind of overnight almost. I mean, just like the montage that they did made it appear like it happened overnight. I feel like it was done in stages, which isn't healthy on the body whatsoever, but I think Santa Claus, we'll get into in a minute, but there was the morphage into Santa Claus, and then also the tying up loose ends, saying goodbye to the job, saying goodbye to relationships and family members and whatnot, and cutting off, relationships and interpersonal, like kind of doing the build up to the big day where he's basically going back to the North Pole forever. Like, he's not coming back to wherever the heck they live. Michigan. He's not going back to Michigan to see the kid. Or if he is, it's not going to be like, oh, he's going to live there again. Because he's going to live at the North Pole 24/7 and just visit on occasion. So there's no longer a need for a house, no longer a need for a car, no longer a need for a credit card, a debit card, like all of this stuff. And so he has to wrap it all up. And I really wish that we had gotten to see that, because frankly, I feel like that would have been interesting. But this movie was made in the 90s. What can I do about that? I don't have a time machine. At the end when I switched, I did it because Scott had officially, at that point, tied up all the loose ends. He had a better relationship with Charlie. He accepted Neil into the family and didn't belittle him. And that was it. That was the last two things that he technically had to do by the end of the movie. Like, before he could be Santa Claus. And so after that, I called him Santa because he no longer was Scott Calvin. He wrapped up the loose ends. He's now just Santa Claus. Scott Calvin's gone. And that's why. But that's my theory, is like the switch is like he's no longer Scott Calvin. That's gone. And then another theory that I have is that being Santa kind of gives you like immortal being powers. I don't know if that's true. I'm sure they probably talked about it on this stupid TV show, but I'm not watching that. So instead, I'm going to theorize as much as I want, and y'all can't stop me. So I think that being Santa comes with powers, and you get, like, regeneration and staying old for as long as you want, and, like, not having to deal with aches and pains and arthritis and stuff, and instead you got, like, a healthy body, the body of a 20-year-old with the age of, like, a 70-year-old, like, that's the trade-off. But that's the other theory. Obviously not as, like, probably the same conclusivity as the other one, like, there's things to kind of back it up, but it's also, like, there's also not a lot of B-roll footage, or there's a lack of footage in general of, like, other stuff occurring to, like, back up these points, so we're just gonna assume that I'm right. Aside from all of my theories, which the two are, I guess, theories, I genuinely enjoy this movie due to a variety of reasons. The nostalgia is one of them. I think I mentioned that briefly, where it just kind of ties into with my family, and it is reminiscent of simpler times when I was a child and I had both parents at home. I think it's because they gave us a broken man who we want to root for, and because of that, it's I don't know, a redemption story in itself. The humor's not bad. It's kind of funny. I know I mentioned that it was divorced dad humor, but I still find that, like, sometimes divorced dads can be funny. It's been known to happen. And I don't, like, cackle. There's only one that I cackle at, and it's the delivery. The delivery is, like, the one that I will never get over because it's so funny to me. And every time I hear it, I can't help but burst into, like, a fit of giggles. Like, I can hear it in my head, and it's taking everything in me not to, like, start laughing because of how, I don't know, like, the emotion in it was just so good. And also, Bernard. Bernard is, like, my favorite character out of this entire series, or at least one of. And I know, I'm just a girl. Okay, Bernard's hot. But also, he's so integral to this story, it's not even funny. But I will get into that part later. Because frankly, I want to talk about the redemption part a little bit. Because Scott Calvin is, I think, textbook definition of broken man. And I know earlier I was like, oh, he's a white man, with a good house, or with a good job, and a house, and a kid, and, what could he really have? But he's an overworker. He overworks himself, and it puts a strain on his relationships. And I can only assume that that's the reason as to why him and Laura didn't work out, was because he works too much. And I think because he works so much, him and Charlie don't have a good relationship either. And I think it's part of the redemption story that, like, he's a workaholic, he's rude, dismissive towards others, doesn't listen to other people's opinions, which I guess kind of falls under dismissiveness. He's constantly sarcastic, always, pushing the emotional questions onto others and, like, just pushing that away. And that's, I think, you don't need proof of that. That's scattered throughout the film. If you, like, genuinely watch it, you'll see, like, oh, like, the instance where he dismisses his colleague who was going to do a speech, and he's like, nobody wants to hear that. Let's hear me talk. It's just, like, things like that. He's not the most well-rounded guy, and that's frustrating for a lot of people. And it's really hard to deal with and put up with. So, he is just a broken man. And I find that his relationships reflect that. And because he takes, like, a whole 180-degree turn in emotional well-being, it feels like a redemption story because we're seeing this man learn how to fix his relationships. He fixes, eventually, the relationship with Laura and Neil. Now they can co-parent together. He fixes the relationship with Charlie. He's no longer dismissive of the elves, because he was originally, quite rude, to be honest. He treats people kinder. He treats himself kinder and with more respect to others and himself. And it's a redemption story because you see him, like, turn into a good man. And I mean, that probably has to do, if not most likely to do, with the fact that he's turning into Santa Claus, and Santa Claus is well known for being jolly and kind and joyful, and having holiday spirit literally in his bones, helping children of the world and giving out toys and stuff, like being this pinnacle of a creature, and he has to live up to that name, and so he starts to change. And whether or not it's because of the job title being what it is, I'm not going to hold relevance, because I still think that regardless, it is just a redemption story. Your redeeming quality is your job is going to make you a better person, whether you like it or not. And because you are going to be a better person, people will like you more. People will want to be around you more. You know, there's no longer going to be a need for others to try to get away from you, because all they want to do is, like, be in your presence because you treat people right. And that's the goal. The humor is good. There's a couple parts. I know I mentioned earlier that, like, there's some parts that make me giggle and laugh. I find that it's so simple. The cable company joke, killer. I love it so much. It's so funny to me. We had cable growing up, kind of, at times. It's so funny. Or, the outraged fat boy part was so funny to me. That's the one that I giggle at all the time. Because it's like, I don't know, he sounds distraught and outraged at the exact same time. And it's like, every single time I have watched this movie over the past 3 weeks, I have giggled at how outraged he gets. It's just, I don't know, it makes me so happy. It's so funny to me. It's okay, you don't have to find it funny. It's fine, I'll ignore you. There was a few things that I didn't find so funny, which I know, right? I'm the pinnacle of comedy, so obviously what I say goes. That's a joke. I'm kidding. No, so this is kind of where we get into, like, the whole, like, comedy is subjective because it's art, and art is subjective, and so it's like, if you don't like it, it's because it's not meant for you. Which is fine. I will fully admit that some jokes I just don't find funny, and that's okay. Like, there's some movies that I just don't find funny, and that's okay. A lot of Adam Sandler movies are ones that I just can't handle because it's, like, the same kind of humor as Tim Allen's. It's just, you know, it's divorced dad humor, and, like, while sometimes it's funny, other times I can't handle it, and it makes me want to claw my eyes out and pull out my ears. Like, I just, you know, weird reactions, I'm sure, but it's like, it is what it is. Particular though, this itself isn't bad. I felt it was cringy though. The ELF bits, I kind of cringed a little, just because it's like, I don't know. Maybe it's because it's, like, on children, like child actors, because they use child actors for most of the elves. So I think that that's what it is. Otherwise, I have no clue what the problem is. I can't handle it. It makes me, like, just, like, cringe a little, like, oh, why would you say that? Oh, why would they write that for you? That's so, I don't know, I'm being dramatic, probably, but whatever, that's fine. In the midst of Scott's transformation into, you know, Santa Claus, there's this one scene where he's walking down a street, and he's muttering to himself of, like, oh, this person's good, bad, naughty, this person's good, oh, bad, naughty, and he looks at, like, a young woman and goes, oh, very good. And she's, like, she says something witty back, but it's, like, basically, like, you know, buzz off, Grandpa. And, you know, he makes, like, this weird dog noise and then, like, walks away dejected. And then we see him, like, dyeing his hair after. And I'm just like, why? You know, like, I don't really know if this was integral to the story or if this was really funny. But, like, okay, I don't know. It's just, it was like, oh, it's like the other scene that I just cringe at, because it's not necessary, it's not needed. It just feels like a thing done so that the adults watching the movie get some sort of enjoyment out of it. I don't know. But, yeah, that was my issue with the humor. But the few other problems that I had with the movie, is I didn't like Charlie a lot. And I know it's kind of weird because he's like one of the main characters and you kind of have to like the guy, or the kid, I guess. But it's just, it was the way that he would guilt trip the adults. And I understand why, you know, if you really think about it, like, the behavior isn't at all that questionable, because it's like, his relationship with his dad is bad, his relationship with his mom is bad, his relationship with, or actually not that bad, because him and his mom and Neil are all good, but his relationship with his dad is pretty bad. His relationship with his mom and Neil is, I guess, fine, but he's essentially guilt-tripped all the adults numerous times throughout the entire movie, to the points where it's like, what is going on? Like, genuinely, what has happened? Because he guilt-trips Scott into putting on the jacket. He guilt-trips him into getting the sleigh. He guilt-trips him into putting on the suit. He guilt-trips him into going down a random home's chimney and delivering presents. He convinces him numerous times to, like, do things that are genuinely illegal. Like, breaking and entering is one thing, but then if you do get caught, you're running the chances of being told you're stealing. Like, it just, the way that he convinces them is all, like, so manipulative for an 8-year-old that it genuinely, like, made me upset. There was times, though, that I was like, okay, this is fitting for, like, a child. Like, a child would act like this, thank God. They weren't just trying to make him seem adult, because some writers do that. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. But in this instance, he wasn't really shown as adulty. There was some moments, though, that I was like, okay, like, that was good. But it was just the manipulation, I guess, and just, like, the guilt tripping of, like, oh, well, you never want to do whatever I want. And it's like, sweetheart, you want your dad to put on a dead man's jacket and coat and pants, grab a bag of presents sitting in the back of a sleigh, walk down to where the chimney entrance is, slip down it, and deliver presents and come back up. That's weird. We reach a point here where that's just too much. So I didn't like that. I felt that, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I know that I said that there was a tonal change with the writing and how Scott and Santa presented themselves. But there was also, I think I noticed that this felt more like a retelling of events. Like, it could very easily have passed as if, like, we opened the story not as Scott, but as Santa Claus talking about how he got to be Santa Claus. If that makes any sense? Because at times, relationships are pictured in such a one road way. Like it's just, like, the only depiction there is. It doesn't feel like it's, like, it fits the narrative of, like, oh, Scott's trying to make amends. And it's very, like, one-dimensional. That's the word. It's very one-dimensional when it comes to the relationships and the events. Like, it's all very Scott-focused, which is the point. I'm not dissuading that. But it almost feels like it's a retelling from Scott's perspective. And then when it's Santa's time to come out, it's from the elves' perspective, because we see the elves line up outside the Miller's house, these undercover elves. And they're watching Santa get on the roof, and they're watching him, fly away. And then it cuts back to Scott later in the evening seeing his kid again. It's just like, it feels like it's one-dimensional, and it's being told by Scott, but not being told by Scott. Like, it's third person, but almost third person, and yet also first, is what I'm getting at. And because of that, they paint Neil in a very negative light. Neil isn't very well liked for majority of the film. I would argue, though, that because he's not well liked, he's almost integral too, because he's the one that keeps a cool head when Charlie's continuously showed concerning behavior regarding Scott and Santa Claus. Like, constant, continuous behavior that it's a problem now, because it's gags and funny the first night, but this is like 6 months in. Charlie still thinks Scott's Santa. Charlie is 8, almost 9. There's no reason for him to think that. Let alone the fact that they've been told by Scott numerous times that he's talked to Charlie and told Charlie that that's not true, that that's not what happened. And Charlie's been stubborn and has been stuck on the fact that Scott's still Santa, and nobody else really believes that Scott's still Santa because Scott looks like a middle-aged white man. He doesn't have the beard. And when he even does, they think that he's going crazy, that he's fulfilling the delusions of Charlie. And we don't want that. And so Neil's painted constantly as like this negative opposing force. Like therapy, but in particular he's wrong because he's using his therapy and his words to flip the story and make it all about how Scott's the problem. Like Scott's the issue. And like Scott is the problem. Scott's refusal to do anything, to do anything to fix situations properly is what gets him in the messes that he's in. If Scott was around more, Charlie and his relationship wouldn't be so bad. If Scott wasn't constantly trying to force a fight between him and Laura, things wouldn't be so bad. If they all had honest and open communication about Charlie's needs and wants as a child, things wouldn't be so bad. But they don't do that. None of them do that, including Neil, which again feels like another like slight of we need to like make him appear not so good because he's not supposed to be good in the story, not till the end. But they ostracize and villainize Neil a little bit, and that's fine. I don't really care that much about the guy. He's not like my favorite character. He's kind of funny. I did find him a little funny sometimes, but it was just something to like note that like they do tend to like push the hate Neil agenda. And this is kind of the last point of things that I just like disliked about it, but Bernard only shows up like 4 times throughout the entire film. And as a Bernard lover, that was sad. I was a little upset. I counted. And so that's frustrating. And that was something I didn't like. But on the other hand, Bernard is very integral to the story. I mentioned that earlier. I mentioned that he was important. And here's why. He only shows up as a plot device for the first season. For the first movie. The second movie, I'm sure, is the same as well as the third. But we're not talking about this. We're talking about the first one. So, Bernard shows up 4 times. And every singular time he shows up, something eventful is either about to happen, will happen, or has happened. Like something is going to change the story and the way that we all view it. The first time he shows up, he greets Scott at the North Pole. He's the head elf, right? So he's in charge of all the elves, and he's essentially the advisor to Santa Claus. So Santa Claus talks to Bernard. Bernard tells him everything going on. We're down on this, we're low on this, we're up on this though. He's basically, I wouldn't say the assistant, but he's like the second-hand guy, right? He's the guy that, keeps the place running, keeps things in check, and tells the big guy what's going on. So, he talks to Scott first. He's the one that informs him of the Santa Claus, of what he basically signed when putting on the jacket. And he is, I wouldn't say the first to greet him, because it's actually a different elf. But he is definitely the first one to, greet him and actually show him some of the ropes, And then the second time he shows up is Thanksgiving. He shows up as soon as Scott gets there, a little bit after, and basically convinces Scott to take Charlie with them, which is bad for a variety of reasons, because there's the kidnapping, but it also pushes the story along, because if he didn't do that, the kidnapping wouldn't have happened, and Charlie and Scott's relationship wouldn't be good anymore. Because taking him with them, or taking Charlie with them to the North Pole, repaired a lot of that relationship. Like, that almost month-long absence helped immensely. And if they hadn't done that, there still wouldn't have been a connection. And then the third time Bernard shows up, he shows up sitting with Judy and this other elf that I don't remember the name of, but he's like head logistics and like R&D, and they find out that Scott hasn't contacted them in a while, and they're like, hey, what's going on with that? Like, Scott needs to be here. And they receive no contact, and so they're like, okay, ring the ELFS. And so Bernard rings the ELFS, which takes, you know, the time, I guess, or maybe not him, which basically goes and gets Santa, right? They're the retrieval specialists. So they call for the he calls for the ELFS. And then the fourth and final time that he shows up in that movie is literally to tell Charlie that no matter where Scott is or what Santa's doing, he is still going to be his dad. And that as long as he looks into the snow globe and like thinks of his father and shakes it and stuff, his dad will be there. And that's a monumental position, because we've clearly spent, you know, an entire movie of Scott trying to figure stuff out with Charlie, and Charlie and his relationship building, and then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, Scott can't live here anymore. Scott has to go to the North Pole. He's not going to be here. He's not going to be around. You know, like, you're only going to see him every once in a while. You're not going to see your dad anymore. And so having the ability to, like, see him and know that he can see him again is important to their relationship. And that is where I think I'll end it off, because that's all I've got written down. I did want to get some things out of the way. So, at the time of recording this, Disney has come out with some AI stupid stuff, and so I understand if there's, you know, upsetness or whatever. That's not a word, but I'm going to use it anyways. If people are upset because I am technically discussing a Disney film from 1994, full stop, understand. It's just that when the news broke out, I kind of had already written it down, and there was just no way that I was gonna be able to write something else and have it be substantial and fun and joyful and cute. Although I wouldn't really call this camera quality cute, or the fact that my glasses give off a beautiful glare. You're so shiny. But it's whatever. So yeah, I understand that the AI stuff going on with Disney is not cool, but it is what it is. We persevere, we push on, push forward, push higher, push faster. And so I think I do want to do one of these again. Not like, okay, hold on, that doesn't make sense. I want to do another Christmas one again, or like a holiday movie again. I figured I'd do Klaus, but I might not. This is all very much next year, but I want to, like, give myself, I guess, like, the confirmation of I'm doing it again. Like, we're doing this again next year no matter what, come hell or high water. And that means that I need to tell myself that we're doing this again, come hell or high water. But figuring it out is going to be interesting. And that, I think, officially wraps it up. Thanks for sticking out for so long. I try to keep this short and sweet, but I know that I got a little lost there in the details. But I hope that makes it all worth it. I'm sorry if the raspiness of my voice is worse. I really tried to, like, alleviate that a little bit with some water. Unfortunately, I've spoken for, like, 4 hours straight tonight, so it is what it is, guys. You're just gonna have to deal with the raspiness, you know? Maybe I can turn into Corpse and just start singing songs. Yeah. As always, happy holidays. Take care of yourself, love yourself, take care of others, love others, respect yourself. Drink your water. Yeah. And, see you later. Happy holidays. And ring in the new year right.